Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1199 of Locked on Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday. And thank you for joining us, as always, on the show and making the Locked on Hawks podcast your first listen each and every day. Check us out and follow us, subscribe on all platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our newly launched YouTube channel. Today's podcast will be myself and Rafael Barlowe of NBA Draft Junkies and NBA Big Board, as well as the Locked on NBA Draft podcast. We talked about all kinds of stuff on the NBA Draft. It was a good time to go ahead and do that in advance of the NCAA tournament. There are some connection issues on Rafael's end, so my apologies for that, but I want to at least get the podcast to you in advance of the tournament with some priming for the NBA draft season, which is very much rapidly approaching. Even if the Hawks make a run, the draft is coming regardless. It's less than 3.5 months away, so we're getting closer, and I wanted to at least get my first draft podcast of the season in the books. In the meantime, the Hawks do play on the road on Wednesday in Charlotte, a very interesting game, a potential play-in preview, and the winner of that game will actually be in ninth place in the Eastern Conference. The Hawks will be without John Collins in that game on the road again. Gallinari, though, listed as probable for the Hawks on Wednesday. On the Hornets side, Gordon Hayward remains out, so kind of a neutral, maybe at least close to that, with Collins and Hayward canceling out. The Hawks take a jump in competition level. Of course, they had these 3 wins in a row against the Clippers, the Pacers, and the Blazers, all of which were wins. They all count in the standings, but this is a road game against a much better team in Charlotte, so a pretty good measuring stick for the Hawks as they try to right the ship and stay over 500. In fact, if they win this game, they'll be over 500 for the first time in a long time. We'll touch on that game in full depth on Wednesday evening, but I want to at least give you that at the top of the show. After the intro music, you will definitely hear myself and Rafael Barlowe talking about the NBA draft. Please subscribe to this show. Follow us on Twitter at Locked on Hawks. Follow me on Twitter at BT Rowland, and we'll be right back with myself and Rafael Barlowe on the NBA draft.
You are Locked on Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I am joined now by a new guest, and honestly, it is time to pivot into NBA draft coverage a little bit more on the show. I love the NBA draft. It is a passion of mine, but I am not as smart as this person. I am joined by Rafael Barlowe, Director of Scouting, I believe, at NBA Draft Big Board, NBA Big Board over there with Chad Ford, and all kinds of other things. Rafael, welcome to the show, and thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's weird that we're talking draft for the Hawks right now, especially after, all the expectations coming into the season.
Yeah, for sure. And because of that, actually, I've been doing draft stuff during the season for the last 4 or 5 years. Even last year, I was sprinkling it in during the season a little bit. This year, I haven't done really any draft stuff, but with the NCAA tournament coming, and I'm getting more and more questions about the draft because the Hawks are, they've been winning recently, but before that, not so much. So that was a good time to do that. And I thought of you first, to be honest with you, to bring in and talk about some draft stuff. So the tournament gets underway actually as we speak. The first 4 games are happening, but the real stuff gets underway on Thursday. And I wanted to ask you about a bunch of guys, but I guess as a way to get into it, how do you feel about this class overall? Because there's kind of a lot of optimism, I felt like, coming into the year, and maybe a little bit less now. That's kind of how it always goes. But what's your read on this class overall? It's just be sort of a dividing line of the top 3, 4, maybe even 5 guys, and then it gets a little bit even from there. But what's your read on the class overall?
I like the class. I mean, the hard thing is to really last until they finish their rookie contracts. I mean, I remember 2 years ago at this time, everyone thought the 2020 class was so weak, and that was because Anthony Edwards wasn't at like major school overseas, and I mean that class has turned out to be pretty good. I mean, you look at a guy like Desmond Bane, who fell at the end of the draft, at the end of the first round, is averaging like 17 a game on a highly competitive Grizzlies team that is top 4 in the West, I believe. So I try not to really judge a class until after you've completed the rookie year. I like this class though because I think that you have your top 3 guys that are, for the most part, are set in stone. Chad Ford believes that Jaden Ivey could sneak up into that top 3. But for the most part, I think it is, every draft boards are pretty consistent, and then 10 is totally different. We kid from Canada that hasn't played a single minute in college basketball and is projected as a top 10 pick because he was the top ranked high school player in 2022, which means he would have been in the 2023 draft before he reclassified. And then I feel that between picks 15 and 30, maybe even 15 and 35, I do not think that there's that much of a. I like it because I think draft night is going to be wild and unpredictable. And which, I guess you can say that for pretty much every draft, but I like how there's just not much of a difference between a guy that could be a back end lottery pick, mid first rounder, and early second round pick.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting group, and I've been digging into it more and more, and probably a little bit behind where I normally am. I'm an undercover draft head, whereas it's not my main thing, but I still have to do some draft stuff along the way. But
Mhm.
I sort of agree with what you're saying up and down this class, and the top guys have been kind of set, depending on the order for sure for a little while now. But it really does seem kind of jumbled beyond that, which is not the worst thing in the world. You mentioned Chad having Jaden Ivey getting into that conversation potentially in the top three. Does that mean that he's your number four guy? Or is that sort of firm for you? I was actually going to ask you who your number five guy was, but is Ivey not in that top tier for you in your mind?
Yeah, I have number four. Chad thinks he could go as high as number one. And
with the right team, I guess.
Yeah, they say teams they usually don't draft for fit; they draft for the best playable. But I do agree with Chad in the sense that Ja Morant's play this year has really helped Jaden Ivey. I mean, Jaden Ivey has helped himself, but I think some scouts are going to see some similarities because it is a copycat league. And Ja Morant's impact, due to his athleticism, motor, competitive fire, has it's been great for Memphis. I'm a little bit more reserved on making that comparison because, in my opinion, Morant was just head and shoulders a better passer and playmaker. A combo guard feel to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that Ivy has grown on me. I was a little lower on him even a couple of months ago, and I think he's kind of worked his way up for me to the point where I definitely think he's a top four guy, no question. You could on the right day, the right team, I could probably get him in a little bit higher than that. But I'm kind of with you, him being the fourth guy. Do you have a clear number one, or is it a tier at the top with what I can only assume is Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith, and Paolo Banchero in some order? Do you have a favorite of that group, or are those guys pretty close together?
I do, and I'm like the only one that everybody has the same top three for the most part. Banchero has been number I've seen, but I have Banchero as number one. I think that he has more tools in his toolbox that he's been able to show. I think that he is one of the best passing bigs that we've had in recent memory. And because Duke has multiple guards that may not play well off the ball, he's kind of settled into a role as a isolation scorer, post player. While I think that he is a really, really good secondary playmaker guy that you can put in pick and rolls, and excellent passer. I mean, there was a game against Syracuse where he carved up their defense for about it was either 9 or 10 assists. I think, in my opinion, if you're going to be a high-level scorer, in order to be effective, you have to be a really good passer. And so when I look at Jabari, I think that he's being set up. When I look at best as someone feeding him, whether it's throwing him a lob or him open from dribble penetration where he knocks down a three. I think Paolo is a guy you can give the ball to on the block and say, "Hey, go get me a bucket." And if he's dominating there, he has the passing instincts in the field to where he can make you pay for double teams. I think you can get really creative with him. If you can run like 4-3 pick and rolls or 4 or 5 pick and rolls. So that's why I have Banchero as my number one.
I can see it for sure. I mean, he's certainly interesting on the ball in a way that Jabari Smith is not yet, and Chet is an interesting case in himself. Smith being the shooter that he is pretty crazy at his size. There's the KD comps that are out there that are pretty aggressive. You got to say, pretty aggressive comp there. Yeah. Anytime you can compare a guy to KD, probably a little bit aggressive, but they all are, while they're all like, fours, or maybe even if you think Chet's a five, they're all very, very different, the three of them, which makes it really interesting because they're similar position wise or similar age wise, but they just have three completely different games. And that makes it kind of fun because I found in talking to people, like people have very different evaluations of these guys, even if they're all at the top three, the orders are very different and kind of the strengths, weaknesses, and observations are very different.
Yeah, different. And I think even though they all start before, I think in clean lineups you could see each playing the five. That is, teams are small. I think that the knock on Banchero is that he may not have the same defensive upside and potential as the other guys, but I think he's the best shot maker and shot creator of the three. And I guess it just depends on if you prefer the defensive upside or the offensive upside potential. And then if you feel like there's, Smith could be like the balance between all of them. He may not be the best defender of the group, but he's steady. He may not be the best offensive player, but he's definitely not the third. So I think somebody would have Smith as the safest pick because he's also the youngest of the three.
Yeah, not to go down the rabbit hole too much, and ask you the very obvious question, but do you care that Chet is 195 pounds?
Well, I'm not the one that's writing the checks.
Yeah, true.
If I were, the owner of a job depending on 19-year-old, 190-pound kid, I'd have some concerns. But I like the fact that he's tough, and even though toughness doesn't always, prevent injury or guarantee health. Yes, I am. But then again, no, he hasn't shown any signs of being injured, and so I kind of think it's unfair to have all these question marks or concerns about his injuries or predicting injuries when he hasn't shown any signs. So I'd say I get it, but no, not right now. Give me a reason to be concerned. Like maybe if he were missing games here and there, he's AJ Griffin, where he's had a history of injuries. He's been healthy, so I just think it's unfair to put that label on him.
NBA fans, are you looking for a daily fantasy option right now? If you are, you can check out the award-winning app at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it, and I know that you will too. It's so easy to use. All you have to do to use PrizePicks is to pick 2 to 5 players and an over/under on their projections. If you win, it's up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you against the projected numbers. It's just that easy. An entire entry can be done in just a minute or less. It's really kind of a swift process that makes it very convenient to use, and it's also, PrizePicks is safe, and it offers fast withdrawals. PrizePicks offers props on almost anything you can think of, including points, rebounds, assists, and even steals on the basketball side. They also have mixed sports entries, so if you like MMA or soccer or college hoops, put those things together to use those skills all together at the same time. And for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive offer just for our users. It's a no-brainer, absolutely. $50 for free if you use a player in your first PrizePicks entry and they score at least a single point. Yes, just 1 point. You win, but you have to use the promo code NBA. That's right, exclusive offer for our Locked On fans. Sign up today. Use the promo code NBA. $50 for free if a player in your first entry scores a single point. Check it all out at PrizePicks. So beyond the top guys, the NCAA tournament is sort of a good framing device. I think it can often be overrated in how much it's actually going to change things. But sometimes guys break out. There's been famous stories of that where guys will rise from late first or lottery or whatever. Do you think there are any guys that are like primed to maybe do that? Not necessarily that they're going to, but that they actually could change minds and jump 10, 15 spots on a board in the next couple of weeks. I guess some teams might value it more than others, but does anybody jump out to you as like an NCAA tournament in particular, like maybe a young guy who hasn't quite done it yet, that kind of thing?
As a freshman, like Josh Minot, he's coming off the bench, but he's shown like flashes of athleticism. I mean, to me, he doesn't have a true position. He has the body and skill set. Well, he has the body of a wing, but he has the skill set of like a happy four, but he has, those physical tools. This is one that I could see like had point, 13 rebound steal game, then it's going to make it not go up. There's a few other guys that, were, I would say it's usually would be like a that has come off the bench and maybe a late addition to the maybe even like Alex Fudge, who some people have compared to Thibault as the best wing defender since Thibault, and let's say match up against Wisconsin, that if it plays out, and let's say he just has an amazing performance where he shuts down Johnny Davis, or he gets like 4 steals, 4 blocks, and knocks down 2 corner threes, then yeah, I could see his stock rising. I put a whole lot of stock into it because even though it is a big game and it may show like how you perform under pressure. I mean, I look at John Zhang last year. He had a great NCAA tournament, and a lot of people projected him maybe as a late first round pick, and then he went to the combine and I guess got humbled a little. You didn't really see him, on most people's boards as a top 40 pick. So, he's a guy where the strong tournament play actually didn't really help him. But then, I remember like Miles Simon back in like 97.
Wow,
I was a big fan, and I thought Miles Simon was the best player. But I was a teenager then. But I thought, he's the best player. I would have taken him over Tim Duncan, my teenage self after leaving Arizona. Joe Alexander is someone that I can think of. He had a good run for West Virginia a few years ago. He ended up being maybe like the 7th or 8th pick.
Yep.
And then, I mean, the one that, and it's actually, ironic that we're talking Hawks, Hawks podcast, Marvin Williams, Chris Paul, if I'm not mistaken, he had an awful NCAA tournament game, the last game. And Marvin had a good run for North Carolina. Ended up being selected over Chris Paul. That was alternate of a small sample size. I mean, maybe the tournament game didn't have any impact on it. Maybe it did. That's something that I can think of.
Yeah, I remember more recent one. Malachi Richardson with Syracuse was like very clearly a guy who just kind of inspired people. And I never kind of bought that one, to be honest with you, but he clearly jumped in the draft to the point where we went in the first round and didn't go very well after that. But there are some guys that are like, you mentioned a few of them, but like I'm thinking like maybe the 2 Baylor young guys, Jeremy Sohan, Kendall Brown as potential guys who could like break out because Baylor's going to be playing potentially deep into the tournament. And those guys are certainly talented and like kind of raw, at least in the case of Brown, pretty raw still. But I wonder if you have the right flashes on the right day, things can switch for you. Like maybe Tari Eason with LSU now that they have their new head coach and all that stuff too. And he's not been like always on the radar as much for non-diehards, but if they make a run, he's kind of their best player and all that stuff. So I had some just guys that were on the top of my head, but I wanted to see like if anything popped to you, just because like, obviously guys like Keegan Murray, who's probably going to be a top 8 pick already, like might just take over the tournament. That wouldn't be a huge surprise, but those guys are already kind of on the radar.
Yeah. And the thing about the Baylor guys, which makes them hard to predict is I could see one of them or even both of them having strong games. And then I could see both of them scoring 10 points combined. So you just never know with Baylor guys. I mean, Brown is pretty reluctant to shoot, and you just never know. I mean, they're not even they're the best NBA prospects on their team, but they're not even the best players on their team. And that's what makes this such a, so hard. I mean, I even think that, even Chet, he could be the number 1 pick in the draft. I don't think he's the best player on Gonzaga's team right now. I think he's the best NBA prospect, and that's what makes this thing fun and makes it such a crapshoot. And same thing with Eason. I mean, he's a guy that he wasn't on my radars coming into the season. And then maybe around December he started showing some flashes, and then same thing with him. If he has a great game against, let's say, Wisconsin, then that could help him out. But I think like a guy like Alex Fudge could be the guy. Just a strong defensive performance, and it'll justify some scouts saying, "See, I told you I like this guy. He has potential." And then bam, he's a mid first round pick.
Yeah, it's there's always gonna be one or two that make some kind of jump. Now, whether they jump into the first round or jump off the board or whatever, I know like even the first four people listen to this, like I think Blake Wesley might be an interesting guy to look at if
Yep.
they were to get into the tournament, especially he's gonna be playing an extra game potentially with the first four, and he's in the first round for some people already, but he's a guy that is could look great in the right situation. I'm a Michigan guy, so I'm thinking about Caleb Houston, and like I'm kind of worried that he might just have two shooting games in a row on a big stage and suddenly be gone. If that makes sense, he's had
Yeah.
kind of a weird season, but he's the kind of guy that was a preseason, top 20 guy for a lot of people, had kind of a bad year, but now could be jumping back up. So they're all over the
Yeah.
place in this draft.
Yeah. For him, it's like, all the hype that he had coming into the season, and then there's kind of a disappointing year. But then, you know what? And I haven't seen the stats in like a week, but I know me and Chad did a podcast on like some of the disappointments, and then he was on the list, and I look up and like, oh, shoot, he's shooting 38% from three.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh,
It's crazy because he shoots really well at home and really bad on the road. It's like this. It's like the prototypical freshman, and like he looks like deer in the headlights when he's not at home, and it's a weird kind of thing. But I still like him actually. But it's been kind of a weird season. In 2022, my resolution was to eat right, and I managed to get there with the help of Built Bar. In some ways, it's not even a resolution anymore because I actually enjoy eating Built Bars. They have the protein-infused puff bars that are fantastic to all the other flavors and the fan favorites from Built Bar. Each and every bar has 100% real chocolate, which makes a huge difference, and they taste fantastic. On top of the taste, Built Bars are also low calorie and high protein. You can easily replace your candy bars with Built Bars, both in taste and to improve your overall nutrition. Built.com has all the information that you need, including the nutrition page, which actually you'll be blown away by. Most Built Bars only have 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein with a very low calorie count. And Built Bar also has longtime flavors, the coconut almond, and new flavors coming all the time. Plus, each flavor is absolutely delicious. The best way to check out Built Bar is to go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. If you do that, 15% off on your order with Built Bar. That's promo code LOCKED15, 15% off at Built.com. And I guess we should not ignore. There's this tier of guys every year. I feel like because I cover the Hawks on this show that I don't end up talking about too much. And this year, I'm assuming it's going to be the like mid lottery guys because the top guys always get attention, and then the Hawks will be picking somewhere in the middle of the first round. And there's this group of like I mentioned Keegan Murray before. Johnny Davis is in this group. Maybe AJ Griffin, Jalen Duren, that kind of those kind of guys who are widely projected to be like between 5 and 12. Do you have a favorite? Like, who's your number 5 guy? Who's your number 6 guy in this class outside of those top 4 guys? And because the good thing is, aside from the G League Ignite guys, all these players are in the tournament, which is not always the case, and all these guys are always going to be around for a couple games.
Yeah, we had a couple years with a number 1 pick and didn't make it.
It's gonna be nice this year to actually be able to scout these guys more.
Yeah, and Edwards didn't make it. Even the year with it wasn't 2020. Wiseman, Melo, and
Kobe Toppin was having the National Player of the Year breakout season, and they couldn't play in the tournament, and all that stuff.
Yeah, the guy that I really like, and I'm probably higher on him than most, and I actually just went and watched him play. I mean, I was kind of sleepy because I had just traveled from Europe and jet lag, and then they had the AAC tournament in Dallas, or it's actually Fort Worth. Let me get that correct. I'm not for me. It's all it's all the metro area, but I like Jalen Duren, and I like him because one, I mean, he's only 18. He's supposed to be preparing for his prime right now, but here he's preparing for the draft. He'll be class, so he's young for his class. I mean, just amazing physical tools. Had a big game a couple days ago, or actually Friday. I missed it, but he had like a 20 rebound game or something like that. And the reason I'm so high on him is because one, again, the age is he's shown some flashes of being a ball mover, a passer, but I think that he would be ranked a lot higher if he had a legitimate point guard to get him the ball. And college basketball, the spacing is already, it's like playing in a phone booth anyway because it doesn't have the same spacing as the NBA. You don't have like your stretch fours or anything like that. But we're talking about a guy that had to pretty much get all his points off the muscle from offensive rebound, putbacks. Hasn't really had anyone to set him up for easy looks and lobs. So I'm thinking like, man, you get him in the NBA with more spacing, and let's say you get him with a Trae Young, a guy that's going to give him, easy lobs, and he becomes this vertical lob threat, or someone that's going to break the defense down to get him dump offs. We're talking about a guy that could be a double-double guy as a rookie if he goes into the right situation. I personally would love to see him in Oklahoma City. I mean, I think he fits a need or fills a positional need. Then you got a creative passer in Josh Giddey, who is, having a great rookie year, and Josh is doing this without a vertical lob threat. Like the same thing when he was in Australia. Vertical lob threats aren't really, there's not a bunch of them down there, but I would love to see him actually play with a guy that stretches the floor vertically. So I like Jalen Duren, and I think in the right situation he could be really, really good.
Yeah, I like him too, and it's been a weird season at Memphis, but he's been better once they got settled. And they went on the team run. He's been better the second half of the season, and I totally agree with you. Like having a guy with his skill set and having him not play with a high end point guard in college is just tough. Like you can't see what he's able to do on that same front. You won't be surprised by this, but the number one question that I get about the draft, because of who I cover the majority of the time, is who are the Hawks taking in the draft? But and it's obviously too early for that kind of specific kind of stuff. But we kind of know by now the Hawks are going to be picking somewhere in the late lottery, mid first round, that 12 to 17, 12 to 18 range somewhere. And I have a list of guys who I think might go in that range, but you never know who's going to be gone before that. Like, does Ben Mathurin go off the board in the top 10? Does Ochai Agbaji go off the board in the top 10? Guys who I think would fit well with the Hawks may not be around. Knowing a little bit about the Hawks, I'm sure, and also just like who might be available in this range. Does image about to you as like a potential guy that you think would make sense? Or do you have a favorite that, obviously you wouldn't necessarily take in the top 7 or 8, but actually could be available in that range?
Tough question. Something like this. If I'm an agent and the Hawks want a player to come in for a workout, I'm like, no way. Unless you can guarantee me the moves are going to be made. I do not see a path for any rookie to earn majors with Atlanta, unless you're coming in as a backup point guard. But even then, like if you're a mid first round pick, where are you going to get minutes at? I mean, you still have Jalen Johnson, who is not playing, who, because of where he was selected, he's not playing wise. I mean, I think he deserves to play. If he was in another situation, he could be playing. Jalen Johnson was in Oklahoma City, he'd probably be starting, So
yeah,
it would be tough because the Hawks I know coming into the season, was a team that was in position with their depth and their their assets to be able to make a trade for a guy like Bradley. But he wanted to to leave, but now it's just like, man, I don't even know what direction to go in, because again, if you win, where are you going to earn minutes at? Maybe someone like Dyson Daniels. I think he would be an interesting fit because he can play guard. He's more so of a connective tissue glue guy. Doesn't necessarily shoot it well, but I think he would give Trey an opportunity to play some off the ball. And even though, I don't think it's too wise to have like your best passer and playmaker a lot off the ball, but just having another secondary ball handler. Bogdan is actually a friend of mine, so of course I don't want to see him move. I knew Bogdan when I lived in Turkey when he played for Fenerbahce. So I like Bogdan there. I like Hunter. I mean, I think that he has more game than he's been able to show because he was more so of a ball handler in college and showed some playmaking skills. I think he kind of, hasn't really shown that as much. And really, realistically, you don't. If I'm an agent, I don't want another Cam Reddish situation. I'm not like the biggest Cam Reddish guy, but I don't want a situation to where, I don't really see a clear path for my guy to play. A center, I don't think it makes sense for another center.
Yeah.
Maybe if there's like stretch 4, someone that's like a spec that can come off the bench and shoot. I mean, like I can't think of that right now that I feel like is a stretch 4 that can come in and earn minutes in Atlanta. So if I'm an agent, I'm like, I don't know, man. I think we'll go work out for the Knicks. So,
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I mean, it's one of those things where like Halliburton. This happened a couple years ago now, but Halliburton got a lot of pushback for not wanting to be in Atlanta, and it was not because he didn't want to be in Atlanta. It's because he didn't want to come in and not have a clear path to playing time, and you can kind of see part of that reason. And the Jalen Johnson example was a perfect one because he that was a steal, and everybody I talked to, even if they weren't even super high on Jalen Johnson, was like, at 20, that's a great pick, and everybody liked it. But like you look at the roster and the coach and the situation, Nate's not a big fan of playing young guys. They were super deep, and I was calling it preseason like he's not going to play, and that's unfortunate because we all would like to see Jalen Johnson develop, and it'll be the same thing next year. You'd imagine as well. Like I think if you were trying to find a guy that like could play for them, like maybe Ojai Abaji, just because he's a little bit older and plays defense, that kind of stuff. But even then, I don't know what they're going to do. So,
yeah.
I actually mocked in Dyson Daniels on my most recent mock draft. So we're in lockstep on Dyson Daniels as a pretty interesting guy. But even he's probably a year or two away from like actually playing for the Hawks because of where they are. I mean, just knowing no one likes to hear this, but just I like to be realistic. And Nate McMillan is not going to be like, okay, 19-year-old, get on out there and play 25 minutes. He's just not going to do that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it might be the weirdest situation. Maybe Memphis' situation is a little weird because they're
true.
kind of in the same predicament and they're winning and they're going to end up with a lottery pick because the Lakers are so awful.
Oh, yeah, that's actually more because, I mean, Memphis is where the Hawks were last year, basically.
Yeah.
Like they had their breakout season and they're also loaded and deep. That's exactly where the Hawks were last year, except the Hawks picking 20th. Like you just said, Memphis is going to be in the lottery, and that's great. Like, but that also kind of frees you up to take a swing. Like if you don't have to play the guy, you can take anybody you want, and that's the Jalen Johnson thing.
Took guys last year with Zaire Williams, who he just had an awful year, and I mean some of it was stuff out of his control, but he was below 40% from the floor though, and then they were able to take a gamble on him, even with the guy they took on Saudi Aldama, the guy with the 30th pick.
Yep.
And I don't know, man. Like it's just weird for the Hawks, like if I'm an agent, where is my guy going to get the playing time needed to put him in position to cash in on a second contract? Unless there's, which God forbid if you're a Hawks fan, if the Hawks don't make the playoffs, then moves will be made. That the roster will have changes, but it's just where would the changes be made? I really like Capella. I like Collins. I think Collins needs more touches. Trey is there. I think that they have good complementary pieces. I haven't watched them enough. The fact that he may just have too much talent. So yeah, I mean, I just think like it's like a stretch 4, but even then, got there with. I think is he your year? Did he sound like a short deal?
Yeah, he's actually
deal?
not. He's non-guaranteed for next season. So like he'll probably not be there, I would guess. But like you said earlier, there isn't really a stretch 4 option that's like a very obvious guy until you get a little bit lower down the board. So like the one that I would do is kind of cross off the centers, which you said too. Like I can't imagine them drafting like Walker Kessler or Mark Williams, just because those guys are pure 5s and they just can't really justify that with Okongwu and Capella. But everything else is kind of on the table, I think, just because of how deep they are and where they are.
Like a Kennedy Chan, something like that.
I mean, they could, but in my mind, that's tough. Yeah, it's tough for me to justify that in where they'll be picking because, if they're picking 28th, you just take the best player, and if it's Kenny Chandler, it's Kenny Chandler. But if you're picking 13th or 14th and you have Trae Young, like I think you can't really justify picking a backup point guard in the lottery. Like that's just it's not a good use of resources in a lot of ways. So I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, and even to me, like been a good compliment piece because he would have been able to play and then, ultimately not much of a fall off when he's running the second unit. But he would have been a perfect fit because of his versatility. But then it's a situation where his agent he ended up going to that situation for Even though, I mean, it was good, but
It
he
worked
was
out
out
for
of
him.
there. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting what happens this offseason in Atlanta. Hopefully, they can turn around. It's pick ends up lower in fences.
Yeah, that's a good point. Before I let you get out of here, I asked this to everybody that I have on the draft, but it's been a while since I've had somebody on. So you're the first one this year.
Okay.
Who's your guy in this class? Do you have a guy that you love, whether it's a second round guy that you love, or like who is your guy in this entire class? If you had to pick one guy.
Oh man, I've got a few. Um, I think late everybody has. I feel like I'm the last one on the Paolo #1 train. I've been finding myself defending him.
Yeah.
Getting debates about him. Oh man, there's a few guys I like. So one is Ishmael Kamagache, even though he doesn't really make sense for the Hawks. He actually kind of compares himself to Capella. He said Capella mixed with a little bit of Bam. But the guy that I like, and I've been high on him, is Hugo Besson. He's a French kid. He's playing in the NBL in Australia. I mean, he's got like this swagger to his game. He's a shot maker, agent, and of course, agents can be a little bit biased. John led the second division in France in scoring last year. He's having a good year in the NBL. You may say, well, he's not necessarily a one. He's not necessarily a. I think he is someone that is going to thrive, or he can thrive, as a six-man microwave scorer off the bench. But his agent compares him to like Tyler Hero. He can shoot, but he's more of a scorer than shooter, if you know what I mean. Like, even though the 3-point percentage was, I haven't seen it in the last 2 weeks, but it's decent. But he's more so a scorer, microwave guy that can just come in and fill it up. Sneaky athlete. I like him. Actually, there's a guy that I had on one of my mocks. I had him going to the Hawks, and as a Pola Jovic out of Serbia. He's somewhere in the mid first round. It's 10. He can handle the ball. The shooting is it's streaky at best, but I'm just talking weapon. This guy, like I said, at 6'10", he's comfortable as a ball handler. He can be your secondary playmaker. He can create his own shot a little bit. And I think he's a decent fit for the Hawks. But then again, he very similar to what you already have in Jalen Johnson. So yeah, I would say Hugo Besson is like my guy that I was, and then I feel like I was kind of early to the party on him when nobody really was talking about him, so that kind of makes me like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's always good to be early on guys. That's it's fun to not necessarily discover somebody, but just be early and know you're early and have those guys be growing. And it's always I always find it informative to see who people that I know you're watching everybody, and to have guys that kind of you're drawn to is interesting. And I wanted to at least get that perspective at the end of the show, even if it wasn't just the Hawks, because I try to cover the draft as at least on the podcast. Yes, it's about the Hawks, but it's also about the draft. I love the draft. And this is my only podcast outlet. So it's like, let's talk draft, even if it's not about the Hawks. So I do appreciate it. Before I let you go, please tell everybody what you have going on, because I know you're a very busy man. You mentioned you have been traveling recently, just got back to the States. But I know you're writing and podcasting and all that stuff. So where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, honestly, I think I've bit off more than I can chew. I was just telling my wife, in the last 6 days, I've been in 6 cities in the last 7 days, and not even including Fort Worth, which just counted, being part of Dallas. So I'm busy. I've my of this basketball starting the international prospect. Found out me and my wife were expecting, and she was with me. So she's back here, and I come home a month to make all the doctor's appointments. So I'm suffering between jet lag. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a busy summer for me. Right, he comes right after the draft.
Oh,
but
wow.
You can find me at so you can find me at NBA Big Board. So Chad Ford has just brought me on as the director of scouting for NBA Big Board. So I have articles there and videos. I still have my website, NBADraftJunkies.com, and that's where I have like a lot of different profiles. And then I have a YouTube channel. Just go to NBA Draft Junkies. You can my work there. But I've been running into some copyright issues lately, they'll breakdowns. So now it's just going to be all original content on there, documenting like my vlogs and some interviews. And then, of course, the Locked On NBA Draft podcast, and my days are every Monday and Thursday. So it's kind of weird to say it, but if you're looking for me, you can find draft content for me 5 days a week, sometimes even 6, because I'm doing so much and just hoping that I have enough stuff to cover that I don't run out around the draft time. Because I feel like most people are only doing 1 or 2 days a week of just content, and I'm doing 5. So I'm definitely gonna need some ideas as we get closer to the draft without being too redundant. And also,
Yeah,
you can find me on Twitter at Barlowe, BARLOWE 500.
and I recommend following all of your stuff. And you're a very busy man, and I appreciate you giving me some time and coordinating with me to try to get this in. So thank you for your willingness, and thank you for being
Anytime.
here. And my highest recommendation to check out Rafael's work and subscribe to his podcast and NBA Draft Junkies and all that stuff. Please follow along with everything. As for everybody else, please subscribe to this show, and we'll see you all next time.